Hello, everyone. I'm the real life fake wizard. I'm joined with me today is. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Jester Bell, aka female Frodo Baggins, aka Teresa, but no one on YouTube calls me by my real name, so that's where you're at.
What's your background with X-Men?
I think I've been an X-Men fan as long as I've been a fan of like Marvel. Getting into like the MCU is what introduced me to the comics and finding them from there. And like I watched like X-Men the animated series, X-Men Evolution, and then getting into the comics from there. And like reading stories that I'd never really dived into and realized, wow, these characters like have so much potential that we have never realized on screen before, and like the interpersonal relationships and I even like it from the comics. I like the interpersonal relationships between the characters and the development even better than anything that I've seen on screen with like the Avengers, for example. But unfortunately, like I really like delved back into X-Men and it made me an even bigger fan than I ever was, but it was kind of the worst time for it because we're gearing up for MCU X-Men. I'm enjoying these characters like, oh, this is an aspect that hasn't been tainted or tarnished yet. Like I can just enjoy them and like just keep my fantasies of what these could possibly be. And then now I'm seeing like, and not to get ahead of myself, what the MCU is doing, and it's so painful to have even more of an understanding of how good these characters can be, and then to just see what they're doing so far.
Yeah, it's gnarly what's happening. Like after all of these years of being like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine like, oh, it would be so cool to have like the X-Men crossover with the Avengers. Like, what if everything was in the same canon? Well, we're finding out now what that's going to look like, and it is well. Terrorism. It seems like the Sentinels have a point. Henry
Yeah.
Gyrick might have a point because oh my gosh, our introduction to Jean Grey with Spider-Man Brand New Day has been wild. All right, so take us through. You see Spider-Man Brand New Day. Did you know of any spoilers going into it?
I knew that Jean Grey was going to be in the movie. I'd known that for many months. I think I was a bit in denial about what they were going to do with her because I heard that she was going to be responsible for blowing up the Hulk. And in my head, I thought, well, that's going to be pretty villainous. I can't, unless like it's an accident or something. And I guess I just kind of put it from my mind, like, no, they wouldn't turn her into a villain like that. So I understood that she was going to be in this movie. I understood that we were going to be getting a different version of the character than we had seen before. And that kind of adds up with Kevin Feige's whole approach to Marvel at this point, which we can talk about. I did not know that she was going to be an out and out, like, evil terrorist villain. I thought that maybe she would be misunderstood, like completely misunderstood in this
Right.
movie and framed for something like that. I did not expect her to be straight up evil.
I think of it like, hey, that's Sadie Sink playing Max from Stranger Things.
Yeah.
I don't see that as Jean Grey. Like, it's so not the original character, whether it be like what I've read from the comics, when I've read the comics, or X-Men Evolution or the 90s show. It's like we're not even close with how, I mean, the attitudes are off, but like she's not the Phoenix in this movie, but she acts
Yeah.
like Dark Phoenix. Like, there's
Well,
kind of no excuse here.
Kevin Feige's entire approach to the MCU for characters that he doesn't like, for the characters that he seems to have ownership of, like, for example, Deadpool is more of a Ryan Reynolds thing. He has a lot of say in that character, and like Sony has a say in Spider-Man, and it seems like from what I'm reading, Tom Holland is now getting a lot of say on the character of Spider-Man. Whenever
Yes.
we go to like Kevin Feige's Marvel characters, it seems like he always has it in his head, I need to do different versions of these characters from the source material. Like for Blade, for example, that just got completely canceled after
Fizzled.
7 years. It's
Right.
so easy to just go like Blade killing vampires. He was like, no, we can't just have him killing vampires. And then you hear the things from behind the scenes. It's like it became like set in the 1930s, which clashed with Sinners, so they couldn't do it anymore. And then they had it like starring Blade's daughter, where Blade was regulated to like the fourth lead, and it's like a journey of self-discovery for his daughter. And that's what I feel is happening with the X-Men. And like, I am not a fan of the fired X-Men 97 showrunner Beau DeMayo. I watched him enough and what he posts online. I'm not a fan of him. I don't entirely trust him. I do think a broken clock is right twice a day. And just because like he's disgruntled doesn't mean he hasn't heard things behind the scenes at Marvel. He did say that like Kevin Feige's mindset for the X-Men is like audiences don't want like a comic accurate X-Men. They want us to do our new takes on the X-Men. And I think that rings true for this. And it's very confusing to me why he would think that, why he would be confident in that after, Blade fell apart. Fantastic Four, it's a one and done movie. They're not going to be able to justify a sequel. There wasn't enough interest in that direction. It's just all the failure of Marvel. It just like astounds me of the confidence that he would have to like, no, people want my own takes on these characters, especially since like people are pointing out, he's really hyping up Doomsday. We've got X-Men in comic accurate outfits, but like, why would he think that people really want the comic accurate outfits and then not the personalities?
When you look at the X-Men now, it's, oh well, we're not going to do comic accurate. It's like, well, then we just stick with the Fox X-Men, because that wasn't entirely comic accurate at
Yeah.
all. At all. Let's go back to black leather again. You want to crack jokes about being comic accurate.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like, we've never actually gotten comic book accurate X-Men. So like, I understand if
Never.
you've done something comic accurate for so long, you're like, okay, now's the time to do a different take. I'm just very confused. So like, you're doing comic accurate at this point would be a fresh take. I don't know what you're thinking.
So we've had Spider-Man Brand New Day. We've had this introduction for Jean Grey where, spoilers, like, she mind assaults thousands of people in New York, causes millions upon millions of dollars in destruction. There has got to be a number of deaths in there if we're being realistic, but they're going to try to downplay that as she didn't kill any people. Oh, well, now there's people that will never walk again, okay, because she's crippled them by shooting them in. Oh, she shot them in the knees. Okay, well, they're never walking again. Our introduction to the mutants through Jean Grey is they're terrorists. And what we're now hearing is that the new X-Men approach with Kevin Feige is that this is going to be morally gray and morally ambiguous, that all of the X-Men are going to live in this kind of morally gray space where they're not necessarily evil, but they're not necessarily good. And I'm curious for your take on that, because you're an X-Men fan like me.
My big thing with the movie is just, I was astounded at how far they took Jean Grey in terms of what she does. But also, it's one thing to just say that, like, all of her, like, desperate destruction, like, incidentally people were killed, or she's out of control, or, like, there's an insanity about her. She revels in, like, the destruction that she's causing. She enjoys it. She does things that are unnecessary. She completely is in control of her actions and her abilities. Like, there was no even excuse. And so I'm like, even if you want to downplay it, which you can't, but you downplay it and say, oh, well, these people were just injured, they weren't killed. She had definite intent to kill at multiple points in the movie. So even if you say, oh, somehow this person survived and they're just injured, or Spider-Man saved the day at the last second, she still had every intent to kill. And so what I say is, this is not moral ambiguity. This is just straight up evil. It just because she has a sad backstory, or her sister was taken from her, or whatever horrible thing was done to her. I said this in the video I just posted. There's a certain level of someone's actions where they lose their sympathy no matter what their story is. So, and I mean, we've seen this before in Marvel. Like I said, Ironheart, Wanda, like, the MCU doesn't understand what moral ambiguity is. That's just how they try to justify evil characters doing evil things, because they're like, well, this character has trauma. That's unfortunately, and like X-Men fans will point this out, that's unfortunately what started to creep up in the 2010s and the 2020s with the X-Men. Now, there's actually some writers, like Gail Simone, for example. I'm not enjoying her run from a writing perspective. She actually seems to disagree with the angle of, we need to like turn the X-Men into these like monsters who are justified in all they do. But I think like there's kind of no way to separate it from like modern day mindsets and politics. And the X-Men like has had politics associated with them, and political storylines, that the kind of the perception of them started to become like the X-Men are hated and feared first, and that therefore justifies all that they do, something like that. That's at least what's happened in the comics. And that's how we keep getting these stories where the X-Men are just like becoming more and more cruel. Like, we hear the rumor about Avengers Doomsday that they're going to be destroying Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man universe just to save their own universe. And it's like, why would you be doing that? Well, I think that it might potentially fit into this mindset that I don't understand why they have, and just kind of shows how warped it is to me, where they think, okay, hated and feared first, that means it justifies all of this. And like anything that they do can be written away as moral ambiguity. Well, you might say that this is a bad action in isolation, but you got to think about like what's been done to these people first and what they're reacting to. I think that that's what they see as moral ambiguity. And I think that that is a huge mistake. I think that like X-Men is not just like an easy sell anymore. I don't know if people even realize that. Like, if you really pay attention to what normies are responding to, they love Spider-Man. Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth still seems like a big sell. Like, my initial screening for Doomsday was almost completely sold out within an hour of the tickets going on sale. But like when I look around and like the evidence of X-Men, like X-Men 97, that was very, very well received, but barely anyone watched it. And especially season two, no one is watching that show, even though it got like all the great reviews when it came out. And I'll just speak for myself. Like, I love X-Men and I would love to do more X-Men videos. I have a hard time justifying it though, because whenever I do an X-Men video, it like really struggles. Sometimes I've gotten a hit, but it like really struggles. And that's just, my niche on YouTube. And sometimes the internet
Right.
doesn't tell you everything. The overall sense that I get is that the X-Men are not as culturally relevant as they once were. And I think that that goes for years of them being misused, whether it's in the comics, Marvel actually tried to throttle them for a while off of merchandise and stuff because they were jealous they didn't have the Fox rights. And the Fox movies never did them correctly. They ended off in a very weak note with X-Men
Terrible.
Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix.
Terrible.
So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, and like the only movie that even got close to $1 billion for X-Men was Days of Future Past, which got 700 million. X-Men is just not as culturally relevant because they've gone through so many years where they've been misused. And so like I don't know how much this Spider-Man film, it might help boost an X-Men film and get eyes on it, but I think that there's a chance that it might just wind up like the Fantastic Four movie, like if people don't respond to the marketing well. Like Fantastic Four, it didn't have a lot of hate around it, but it's like people
Because
just
people
didn't
just didn't
care.
care.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
didn't care. And then it made its money. It actually did better than the other Marvel movies that year. But then the big thing was when it hit streaming, no one was watching it. And like the director of that movie has completely left Marvel. And it's a big indication, like, no sequel to that. There's no fan base around Fantastic Four. And I think that that is the direction that the X-Men are potentially headed in.
What scares me here is, this Spider-Man Brand New Day it's breaking box office records. It's on the road to $2 billion. It possibly could hit 2 billion. It could go past that.
I think it will. I think it will.
I think it will too. That's concerning because Disney and Sony and all these corporations, they always learn the wrong lessons. And so my fear is, and I believe that this was kind of staggered this way. I think this was intentional because we got a series of leaks some time ago. I want to say over a year ago about what the Brand New Day movie was supposed to be, what it was going to be, and it was a Spider-Man villain. Jean Grey was in it, but she did not have such a villainous role in it. She was framed as being the body snatcher, as being a terrorist. Like, she was framed, and at the end, and it's revealed like who really is the bad guy, and it was supposed to be like the Jackal was originally supposed to be the villain for this movie, which is a Spider-Man villain. Clearly that's not the case, and my personal philosophy, if that's true, is that Kevin Feige came in and said, hey, Fantastic Four flopped, Thunderbolts flopped, all of our Marvel stuff is toast. We need to treat this, because we know it's going to be such a hit, we're going to treat this as a soft launch of the X-Men. We need to give Jean Grey way more involvement in this, and it's going to be our kickoff point for the X-Men. And the only reason I really believe that now is because the last couple of days has just been announcement after announcement of leaks and rumors of who's playing who in the upcoming X-Men movie. It's like it's too well timed for all of this.
Yeah, well, all of this was intentional. The one thing that I question about the leaks is it makes sense that like a different villain was supposed to like be the villain in this movie, because that would
Right.
explain why Jean Grey's actions are so extreme. But it still confuses me, like even if that was a rewrite, like, but if you're using this to set up your MCU X-Men, like you should have a good grasp on what you want your X-Men to be, what you want your Jean Grey to be. So why would you allow her to be so drastically changed from a framed character to a villain? So I have questions about that. So we just had The Odyssey, and I mentioned that it was kind of a Trojan horse movie because it wound up being everything I expected it to be in terms of like how it handled its male characters, female characters, its themes, and all of that kind of stuff. But I recognize like most people in like casual audiences aren't even going to recognize any of that because you kind of have to be plugged into all of this stuff to know. So I call that a Trojan horse in that sense. But I also think that Spider-Man Brand New Day has been used as a Trojan horse because, and I don't want to be all doom and gloom. I do want to say this positively about Sony. Like, I think that they have been very good about responding to criticism with the character of Peter Parker specifically. Like, I'll give an example. First Amazing Spider-Man, people were heavily critical of that movie for like Peter Parker's too edgy. He says that the best kind of promises are the ones you don't keep. That is completely against Peter Parker. Okay, Amazing Spider-Man 2. Peter Parker has a brighter personality. He actually does really care and struggle with the promise he made to Captain Stacy. And like the rest of the movie, unfortunately, was awful. But I saw it in terms of the change of portrayal there, that they were trying to respond to criticism. And like, I see it in the Tom Holland movies. Like, people were saying Spider-Boy for so long. I felt like Tom Holland tried to make his performance a bit more mature. So that's kind of a contrast there because I just feel like, again, I feel like Kevin Feige knows Spider-Man Brand New Day guaranteed hit, I can use this to advertise all the stuff that I want to do. And that's why, like, the most blatant example of that is Yelena Belova. Is there any evidence that Yelena Belova is a draw as a character? Black Widow movie she's in flopped.
Flopped.
Thunderbolts star in
Thunderbolts
her
flopped.
flopped. There has been no evidence that she is actually a draw. She is in there solely so that he can put her in the movie. I've already seen like the AstroTurf tweets about how wonderful she is. It's just to put her in the movie and basically advertise her to people. And like the same thing with Jean Grey, it's there as an advertisement for the X-Men in the MCU. And like the same thing was done, in like Avengers Age of Ultron, Iron Man 2. Like he's done this all throughout the MCU where there will be movies that are just basically softcore advertisements for things that they want to do in the future. And so like it's a Trojan horse. And Kevin Feige's done this a lot because every movie that has been like really successful both critically and financially, initially Guardians 3, Wolverine, Deadpool, and the Spider-Man movies, they've all had like a creative force that is like stronger than Kevin Feige, but each time he uses the movies as an example of the MCU's success. Like Deadpool and Wolverine, he was on the stage right after that did well, like just kind of basking in the success of it and announcing Doomsday. And he Deadpool and Wolverine, I would say, really informed a lot of what they're doing with Doomsday, taking the wrong lessons of like the cameos and all of that. But the thing is, I think Kevin Feige is 100% gonna use this movie to justify everything that he's doing in the future. Like, oh, this Spider-Man movie that evil Jean Grey, or as he would put it, morally ambiguous Jean Grey, oh, that made $2 billion or whatever. We should go forward. Oh, Yelena was in that movie. Yeah, Yelena starred in like $2 billion Spider-Man movie. People love Yelena. Really, people just love Spider-Man. And like Jean Grey and Yelena, most people like we're X-Men fans. I'm a huge X-Men fan. I recognize that like X-Men is already this more niche thing because of years of misuse. Like people are not going to they're not going to care about whatever happens to Jean Grey, who already did not get great representation in the movies.
Many times over. Like countless
many times over. Yeah, they're not going to really care about that. Or they might say, like, I am seeing criticism for it, but like Jean Grey is just not like the sacred cow or anything to people.
It's not like X-Men hasn't flopped before, because they have. I mean, Apocalypse didn't do the numbers that it wanted to, and then Dark Phoenix was bad. That was a mega flop. Logan did well and Wolverine did well, but like a lot of those movies after Last Stand, like they weren't explosive like they should have been. It was because Last Stand was divisive too. Last Stand was not a good movie. I hated it.
Yeah, it was really hated. But also I want to add though, like X-Men movies like X-Men Apocalypse were not doing well in the midst of like the superhero boom. Like this was a rising tide lifts all ships. There were a lot of movies like Todd Phillips' Joker, Aquaman, movies that I don't think would have done well unless they benefited from the time of people just being interested in superhero movies and like not having any discernment about like what is DC, what is Marvel, what is all this. Captain Marvel is a movie that I think greatly benefited just from all of the excitement. And so like if X-Men movies weren't doing well like pre-2020s during like the height of superhero interest, then I can't imagine now where it seems like the floor and the ceiling for what a superhero movie can do is like so far apart from each other at this point. I 1,000% believe that if you did the X-Men right, they could be as popular as like Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Captain America, Chris Hemsworth, Thor. I 1,000% believe that, but you have to have like a really big expectation if you are a producer, a director, or writer about what these characters can be, what they will be, and like just the drive to do that right. And that's not what I'm seeing at all with this movie. And that's what I really want to get at. Like Sadie Sink, they said how they cast her is like a co-producer just said, like they were talking about Jean Grey and Spider-Man. A co-producer just said, hey, Sadie Sink could play that role. And Kevin Feige was like, okay, yeah, sure. And then that's how they got her. They said that. Like they didn't audition her. They didn't audition any other actresses. They just decide, okay, Max from Stranger Things is Jean Grey. And that's kind of how I felt like with Fantastic Four. I'm like, these guys, like maybe you guys are struggling to find talent now because they're in such a bad place, but it's like Fantastic Four was kind of DOA for me as soon as I saw that cast. It's like none of these people excite me. They didn't bring anything special to their roles. And that's kind of what it's shaping up to me with like this X-Men movie. Samara Weaving, I think once again, she's a fine choice. I don't know. It might be like a Vanessa Kirby Sue Storm, where I guess it's fine, but it doesn't really excite me or bring anything like raises a character to like really exciting for audiences. It doesn't even seem like there is even that much ambition with this X-Men movie. It's just like, oh yeah, this is our next IP we have to mine.
Well, I think we're gonna have to wait and see what happens, but right now it's not looking too good.
Nope.
But with that, Jester Bell, thank you for joining me for this. You know, we do this video here. Please let the people know where they could find you and what you got coming up.
You can find me on my first channel, which is Jester Bell at Real Jester Bell. And this month, I think I have a lot of videos that are planned to talk about Marvel in the wake of Brand New Day and what was done with the characters there. And, you know, Avengers Doomsday. Probably will review X-Men 97 Season 2. We will see. I felt like I would just do a season review for it. And then I have my second channel, Jester Bell Productions, where I'm continuing to practice my filmmaking. I'm going to be doing some test footage for my feature film script that I wrote, and, you know, writing another short film right now. And so, yeah, you can find my second channel, Jester Bell Productions.
All right, well, everybody, we'll see you next time. Until then, create, innovate, inspire, and we'll cancel your Disney Plus subscription. All right, bye.